Picture the scene. The soft jazz, the laughter floating through the air, the clinking of crystal glasses, all silenced in an instant by the sharp, brutal sound of a slap echoing through the elegant ballroom. My cheek burned with a stinging pain, a humiliation that seared deeper than the blow itself. I stumbled, falling helplessly onto the cold marble floor, my head striking the corner of a table amidst the stifled gasps of my coworkers and the looks of sadistic satisfaction from my husband's family. My mother-in-law's voice rose above the silence. Mrs. Sterling did not speak to defend me, nor to call for calm, but with a malice so cruel it chilled my bones. "Teach her a lesson so she learns." Her voice hissed like venom. "What good is it for a woman to have so much talent? It only brings misfortune to her husband. She might be the brightest woman in the world, but at home, you are nothing more than a wife. Today, only heaven can save you." In that abyss of pain and shame, I managed to discreetly grab my cell phone. I dialed a number I knew by heart and whispered through my tears, "Gavin, please help me." And no, heaven did not save me. My brother did. All this tragedy had begun during the happiest moment of my life, barely 30 minutes earlier. That night, in the luxurious atmosphere of the Skyline Terrace, right in the heart of Chicago, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. I, Ebony Wells, dressed in an emerald green silk gown that my husband, Damon, had chosen especially for me, was the center of all the toasts and congratulations. The party was in my honor. After 7 years of tireless dedication, I had finally been named Director of Planning for one of the largest real estate firms in the country. I looked at Damon, at my in-laws, at my sisters-in-law. Everyone was smiling, and in my innocence, I believed that my success was their pride as well. I thought that 7 years as a submissive daughter-in-law, 7 years as a wife devoted to building a perfect home, had finally earned me their recognition. How wrong I was. Terribly wrong. When the celebration reached its peak, my CEO, Mr. Vance, a middle-aged man who had always appreciated me, stood up with his glass in hand. "Please allow me a few brief words," he began. "Today, I am immensely happy and proud to have a professional as exceptional as Ebony on our team. Not only is she intelligent and brilliant, but she possesses extraordinary willpower." He turned toward Damon and gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Damon, my dear friend, you are incredibly lucky to have married a woman who is a diamond in the rough. You must know how to value her and take care of her as she deserves." The whole room erupted in warm applause. Happily, I smiled at my husband, preparing to thank him silently for always being by my side. But when our eyes met, my smile froze. In his eyes, there was no pride, only deep discomfort. A flame of jealousy and wounded ego burned with an intensity that frightened me. He gripped his wine glass with such force that his knuckles turned white. Suddenly, I became aware that he had not stopped drinking since we arrived. At that precise moment, I saw my mother-in-law, Mrs. Sterling, lean in and whisper something in his ear. Although I could not hear her words, her contemptuous smile and the side eye she shot me told me it was nothing good. After speaking, she patted the back of his hand, a gesture that looked like encouragement, as if she were stoking a fire that was already burning. Damon stood up abruptly, stumbling toward me. His breath, heavy with alcohol, hit me in the face. "So you're brilliant, aren't you?" he growled, his voice loud enough that the nearest tables turned around in alarm. "Now you're the boss. You feel powerful. The whole company applauds you. And I, your husband, am nothing but a zero to you, right?" "Damon, what are you saying?" I stammered, stunned, trying to pull his arm to make him sit down. "People are staring. You're drunk, please. Sit down." "Drunk? Maybe I am drunk, but I realize everything," he shouted, shoving my hand away violently. His voice became increasingly aggressive. "I am sick of living in your shadow. Wherever I go, I hear people say that my wife is better than me, that my wife makes more money than me. Do you know how humiliating that is? Do you?" The restaurant fell into a deathly silence. All eyes were fixed on us. I felt my face burn, my dark skin felt hot to the touch, and my ears rang with pure shame. I looked around for my husband's family, pleading for help, but I found only cold, indifferent stares. My father-in-law lowered his head, pretending not to see anything. My sisters-in-law whispered among themselves with smiles of satisfaction on their lips, and my mother-in-law, Mrs. Sterling, sat there with her arms crossed, watching me with the look of a victor. And then the deafening slap happened. Damon, the man I had loved for 7 years, raised his hand and struck me across the face with all his strength in front of everyone. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony and humiliation that tore at my soul. He lunged at me, grabbing my hair, preparing to hit me again. I squeezed my eyes shut, shrinking back, waiting for the blows. In that instant of terror, no one from his family moved to defend me, and then my mother-in-law's poisonous words sounded like a death sentence, sealing the fate of my marriage. "Teach her a lesson so she learns. Today, only heaven can save you." Taking advantage of the fact that some of my horrified coworkers were pulling him off me, I got up as best I could, not to flee, but to find an exit. I stumbled toward the bathroom, pretending I needed to compose myself. No one paid attention to me. They were too busy surrounding Damon, the aggressor. I slammed the bathroom door shut. I fell to my knees, sobbing silently. I saw my pathetic reflection in the mirror, my natural curls disheveled, a cheek swollen and red against my skin, the corner of my lip bleeding, my expensive dress stained. 7 years of sacrifice, 7 years of enduring slights. For what? For a beating and public humiliation. It was over. Enough was enough. Trembling, I took my cell phone out of my purse. The screen was cracked from the fall. My fingers hesitated as I searched for a number I hadn't called in a long time, a number I always told myself I would never need to use. But today, I had no other choice. The contact was saved with a simple name, Gavin. The call connected. "Yes." A deep, serene male voice sounded on the other end, a voice that had always conveyed a sense of absolute security to me. I couldn't hold it back anymore. The tears flowed uncontrollably. I tried to whisper for fear that someone outside might hear me. "Gavin, help me!" The terrible drama at my promotion party was only the beginning. Who is this mysterious brother named Gavin? What will he do to save Ebony? And how will she respond to her husband's brutality and the cruelty of his entire family? Everything will be revealed. Embezzlement. Damon. How could those two words be in the same sentence? He was an abuser, a coward consumed by insecurity, but embezzling money from the company? I simply couldn't believe it. And yet, who was the sender of that anonymous message that had appeared on the new phone Gavin had given me? How did they know about Damon's problems, and why were they contacting me right at this moment? Was it another trap by his family, a conspiracy to blame me for something else? Just at that moment, the doorbell rang. I started, looking at the door in panic, but then I remembered Gavin's words. "Someone will come to check your injuries." I peeked cautiously through the peephole. A middle-aged woman in a white coat and glasses, looking kind, was waiting outside. I breathed a sigh of relief and opened the door hesitantly. "Good evening, Ms. Wells. I am Dr. Lowe. Mr. Gavin asked me to come," she said with a soft, warm voice that inspired confidence. She examined my wounds with extreme care. The bruise on my cheek was already starting to swell, and the corner of my mouth had a small cut. "Fortunately, these are just soft tissue injuries. The bones are not affected," the doctor said after the examination. "However," she added, lowering her voice, "I noticed you have some older bruises on your arms and shoulders. It seems this is not the first time." Her sentence was like a needle, piercing directly into the pain I had tried so hard to hide. I stood in silence, tears on the verge of overflowing. No, it wasn't the first time. The first time was about a year after our wedding. That day, Damon came home drunk, and because I scolded him for his state, he shoved me hard and I fell to the floor. In that moment, he fell to his knees crying, begging for my forgiveness. He said it was work pressure, that he had drunk too much and couldn't control himself. And I believed him. I forgave him. Then there was a second time, and a third, and many more. The excuse was always the same. I drank too much. I'm under a lot of stress. I didn't mean to. Each time he acted remorseful, took care of me with exaggerated thoroughness, showered me with attention, and I, like a fool, always gave in, deceiving myself with the idea that he loved me, that these were just momentary outbursts. I hid it from everyone, even Gavin. I was ashamed. I was afraid of worrying him, and I still clung to the fantasy of a perfect home. "My dear," sighed Dr. Lowe, setting her medical bag aside. "Silence is what feeds evil. The more you tolerate, the bolder the abuser becomes. Think very carefully about what you need to do." Her words were like a bucket of ice water, a brutal awakening. For 7 years, it had been my silence that gave Damon power, that had transformed him from a husband with a bad temper into an unscrupulous abuser. When the doctor left, I remained alone in the immense apartment. The physical pain had subsided, but the wound in my heart was getting deeper. I picked up the new phone. In the contact list, there was only one number saved: Gavin. I hesitated. I should tell him about the message. I knew he would worry, that he wouldn't let me go, but I had to go. I needed to know the truth. If Damon had really done that, I needed to know why. The next morning, I decided to go to the meeting. I didn't say anything to Gavin. I chose a discreet pantsuit, applied light makeup to hide the bruise on my brown skin, and took a taxi to a cafe called The Daily Grind near the Loop. I chose a table in a secluded corner near the window from where I could watch. My heart was beating wildly. Promptly at 10 o'clock, a woman of about 40, dressed elegantly but with a face consumed by worry, entered the cafe. She looked around and then walked directly toward me. "Are you Ebony?" she asked in a hoarse voice. I nodded. She pulled out a chair and sat down without ordering anything to drink. She placed a designer handbag on the table and pulled a dossier out of it. "I don't have much time. I came because I am a victim too," she said, her voice heavy with bitterness. "I am the wife of Director Montgomery, your company's biggest competitor." I froze. The competitor's wife? Why would she look for me? "My wretched husband!" she growled. "He has used a shell company in your husband's name to launder money. He conspired with Damon, dragged him into the world of gambling, creating enormous debts for him. Then he forced him to embezzle money from his own company and steal confidential documents to pay off those debts. His ultimate goal is to drive your company into bankruptcy and have your husband become the scapegoat, taking all the blame." Every word she spoke was like thunder striking me. A horrible conspiracy, a tangled web of lies and crimes. Damon, my husband, wasn't just an abuser. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, trembling. "Because I can't take it anymore," she replied, her eyes injected with fury. "Not only has he betrayed me, but he is trying to steal my family's entire fortune to sink it into that bottomless pit. I have gathered enough evidence to report him. But I need your cooperation. You have access to the evidence of Damon's embezzlement. If we act together, we can put those two scoundrels in prison." She pushed the dossier toward me. "This is part of what I have. Bank statements, recordings of their conversations. Look at it and then decide. I give you 2 days to think about it." With that, she stood up and left in a hurry without saying goodbye, as if she feared being seen. I was left alone, my body drained of strength, my gaze fixed on the dossier resting on the table. The truth was more terrible than I could have ever imagined. My life, my marriage, everything was nothing more than a piece in a dirty, calculated chess game. On the way home, I received a call from Gavin. His voice did not sound happy. "Where have you been?" I stammered, not knowing what to say. "You went to meet that woman, didn't you?" His voice turned cold as ice. "Don't lie to me. I had you followed since this morning. Ebony, I told you to stay at the house. Do you know that what you did is dangerous?" I remained silent. I knew he was only worried about me. "Come home right now," he ordered. "I'm waiting for you." When I entered the apartment, Gavin was standing by the large window, arms crossed. His face was tense. His worry was so palpable it filled the room. I knew I had made a mistake by acting on my own. "I'm sorry." "Sit down," he interrupted me, pointing to the sofa. I sat obediently, not daring to look him in the eye. He approached and placed a thermos with hot soup on the table. "Eat first, then we talk." While I ate in silence, he sat opposite me. His silence was more intimidating than any scolding. When I finished, he finally spoke. His voice was calmer, but still very serious. "Ebony, do you know why I worry so much about you?" I shook my head. "Because you are my sister, the only family I have left in this world." He looked at me, and his gaze seemed to pierce through me. "Do you remember? More than 20 years ago, on a stormy night, a drunk driver crashed into the group home where we lived. That accident took the lives of my parents. I, a 10-year-old kid, had to see it all. I thought I would drown in pain and loneliness. But then you appeared. A 5-year-old girl, skinny and fragile, but with incredibly bright eyes. You came over, took my hand, and said, 'Don't cry anymore. From now on, I will be your family.'" My tears began to fall uncontrollably. The memories of the group home, of those difficult days, but filled with a human warmth I never felt again, came rushing back. Gavin, my brother, 5 years older than me, was always there protecting me, defending me from bullies. He gave me the best portion of food, the warmest blanket. He taught me to read. He taught me to be strong. "The day a good family adopted you, I felt happy and worried at the same time," he continued. "Happy because you would have a better life. Worried because I feared there would be no one to protect you anymore. I swore to myself that whatever the cost, I would become someone strong, someone powerful, so that no one could ever hurt my sister again." His voice hardened. "I fought in life. I did things you would probably never imagine. All for that promise." "Is it strictly legal?" I asked, trembling, remembering the aura of power that terrified Damon's family at the restaurant. Gavin smiled slightly, a smile tinged with sadness. "Mafia business." "The line is very fine, sister. I just do what I consider right. I protect who I need to protect. I own a security firm and a few other businesses, enough to have a voice in this city." He looked at me again, and his gaze became incredibly tender. 7 years ago, when you decided to marry Damon, I had him investigated. I knew he wasn't a good person, that his family was a nest of calculating vipers. But you were so happy, so in love. I didn't have the heart to destroy your dream. I was wrong. My biggest mistake was staying silent, thinking that if I protected you from the shadows, you would be safe. But I never imagined the true devil was sleeping right next to you. He clenched his fists, knuckles white from the pressure. "I should have acted sooner. I shouldn't have let you go through this hell. Ebony, forgive me." I shook my head, tears sliding down my face. "No, it's not your fault. I was the stupid one, the one who refused to see the truth. Gavin, what do I do now? I'm so lost." Gavin wiped my tears. His hand, rough from work, was strangely gentle. "Don't worry, I'm here. From now on, no one will ever hurt you again." He looked at the dossier the woman had given me. "We are going to play this game together, and I promise you this. Whoever made you shed a single tear, I will make them pay with a whole river." His words were not an empty promise. I knew that a real storm, a storm named Gavin, was about to unleash upon Damon's life and those who manipulated him. But there was something Gavin didn't know, that in the eye of that storm hid another secret, a secret related to his own past, a secret my enemy guarded as his last ace up his sleeve. After the disastrous promotion party, Damon's family seemed to keep a sepulchral silence. Damon didn't call, didn't send messages. I thought maybe they were scared by Gavin's appearance, but I was too naive. Their silence was just the calm before a much more poisonous attack. 2 days later, while I was at Gavin's apartment, a wave of notifications began to flood my new phone. My name, Ebony Wells, suddenly became a trending topic on all social media platforms. Dozens of articles with sensationalist headlines appeared out of nowhere. Adulterous real estate director swaps husband for mafia boss. The hidden truth behind the promotion party. Husband disciplines arrogant wife, right or wrong? Ebony Wells, portrait of an ambitious woman who uses her money to humiliate her in-laws. The articles were accompanied by photos of Gavin and me, taken secretly. The photo of him putting my coat on me as we left the restaurant. The photo of him taking me to the luxury apartment. The photo of the two of us sitting in the cafe. Under someone's malicious lens, every gesture of care and concern from Gavin was distorted to look like an illicit affair. They even hired false witnesses, supposed co-workers and neighbors, to leave invented comments painting a story completely opposite to the truth. In their version, I was an unfaithful wife who despised her husband, and because I earned more money, had no respect for his family. Damon became a pitiable husband who only acted that way because he was driven to the brink of despair. The media storm hit me fast and unexpectedly. I read every article, every malicious comment, my hands trembling with rage. Not only did they want to humiliate me, they wanted to drag Gavin into the mud with me. They wanted to turn me from a blameless victim into a villain, using the pressure of public opinion to destroy me. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Damon. This time, his voice didn't have the pleading or scared tone, but one of triumphant arrogance. "Well then, are you enjoying the fame?" He laughed. "Ebony, I warned you. You can't beat my family. Now you only have two options. Either you come back home with your tail between your legs, get on your knees, and beg my mother for forgiveness, and withdraw the divorce petition. Or you stay there with your lover and wait for society to spit on you and the company to fire you. Choose. You are a despicable scoundrel." "Yes, be that as it may. Compared to what you've done to my family, I give you 1 day to think about it. Don't force me to use more drastic measures," he said, and hung up without giving me time to reply. I threw the phone onto the sofa, feeling completely helpless. I had underestimated their baseness. They weren't just violent and greedy, they were incredibly malicious, willing to use the dirtiest tactics to achieve their ends. Gavin, who until then had remained silent by my side, picked up the phone and scrolled through the articles. His face was frozen, expressionless. But I knew that beneath that calm, a tsunami of fury was forming. "They've crossed the line," his voice deep and dangerous. "I was going to let you resolve this, let the law speak, but it seems there is trash that cannot be cleaned up with conventional methods." He picked up his own phone and dialed a number. "Cyrus, investigate all the accounts that have posted and commented defaming Ebony. Find the IP addresses, find out who is behind this. I give you half an hour," he ordered, his voice charged with unquestionable authority. "Oh, and one more thing, bring the car around. We have work tonight." He hung up and turned to me. He put a hand on my shoulder, his gaze both tender and firm. "Don't worry, and don't read any more of that trash. Leave it all to me. Tonight, I'm taking you to see a very interesting play. It's called Belated Regret." I didn't know what he planned to do, but looking into his eyes, I knew that tonight, Damon and his entire family were not going to sleep peacefully. And perhaps that was the moment I should have understood that sometimes, to fight evil, one cannot rely solely on goodness. I spent the entire afternoon submerged in indescribable anxiety. Gavin didn't tell me what he planned to do. He only asked me to rest and prepare myself mentally. The luxurious penthouse, which until now had been my refuge, suddenly became suffocating. I paced from one side to the other, looking out the enormous window at the Chicago skyline as the lights began to turn on. I feared Gavin would do something too radical, but at the same time, I felt a pang of anticipation. I yearned to see the panic on the faces of Damon, of Mrs. Sterling, of those people who had trampled on me without mercy. Promptly at 8 o'clock p.m., Gavin returned. He had changed clothes. He was still wearing a black shirt, but with a more casual air. He wasn't alone. Behind him was Cyrus, his loyal assistant, with a laptop in his hand. "Let's go, sister," Gavin said, his voice as serene as if he were inviting me for a walk. "Where are we going?" "To the theater." "To see a play?" He winked at me, a gesture loaded with subtext. The black Mercedes glided us once more through the night, but this time the destination was not a safe place, but the very lion's den. The car stopped in a narrow alley a few dozen yards from the house I once called home. From there, I could see the light filtering through the living room window. Probably the whole family was gathered there, gloating over the media victory they had just orchestrated. "Stay here in the car. You'll be safe. You'll be able to see everything through this screen." Gavin handed me a tablet. The screen showed live images from a micro camera camouflaged as a button on his shirt. "I don't want you to have to face them right now." With that, he and Cyrus got out of the car and walked silently toward the house. I stayed in the vehicle with my heart racing, eyes glued to the screen. I saw that Gavin didn't ring the doorbell, but used a professional tool to pick the lock with astonishing smoothness and speed. They entered the house like two shadows. Through the camera, I saw Damon's entire family sitting in the living room. Damon, Mrs. Sterling, and the sisters-in-law were all looking at their phones, reading the defamatory articles about me and laughing out loud. "You see? I told you so," rang Mrs. Sterling's strident voice. "A couple of articles and we leave her in the dirt. I want to see if that stupid little woman dares to be so arrogant again." "I already called her, Mom," said Damon triumphantly. "I gave her a day to think about it. If she doesn't crawl back here tomorrow begging for forgiveness on her knees, she's going to find out what's what." At that exact moment, Gavin and Cyrus emerged from the darkness. "No need to wait until tomorrow." Gavin's deep, cold voice rumbled in the noisy living room. The whole family spun around, startled. Upon seeing Gavin, the smiles froze on their faces. The air of victory vanished, replaced by undisguised fear. How did you get in here?" stammered Damon, pale as a sheet. Gavin didn't answer. He simply sat calmly on the sofa opposite them, crossing his legs. Cyrus remained standing behind him, placing the laptop on the table. Gavin's gaze swept over each member of the family, a frigid stare that sent shivers down their spines. "I heard you like playing with the media a lot, isn't that right?" began Gavin, his voice quiet but heavy. "You like hiring people to write articles. You like inventing stories, staining the honor of others." "What are you talking about? I don't understand anything." Mrs. Sterling tried to maintain composure, but her voice trembled. "You don't understand." Gavin smiled with disdain and signaled to Cyrus. Cyrus opened the laptop. The screen lit up, showing a series of personal data, photographs, and even private conversations. Leocadia Sterling, 62 years old, addicted to casino slots, currently owes $5,000 to the neighbor in 3B. Damon Sterling, 35 years old, has lost more than $80,000 in online gambling in the last 6 months. A group of loan sharks is looking for him. Clara, Beatrice. Gavin read aloud information about each of them, from the smallest secrets to the darkest stories they tried to hide. The more they heard, the paler they became. "All this information," Gavin pointed to the screen. "With a single click from me, tomorrow it will be all over the internet with all the evidence. Let's see then who is left in the dirt." "You wouldn't dare," growled Damon, trying to recover a shred of dignity. "I wouldn't dare?" Gavin jumped up and walked over to him. He didn't raise his voice. He just leaned into his ear. His voice was a whisper that the camera captured perfectly. "You dared to hit my sister. You dared to make her cry. You know, no one who has done that has ever managed to sleep in peace again." He pulled away, took a stack of photographs from his pocket, and threw them onto the table. They were photos of unfriendly-looking men. "The group of loan sharks you owe money to, they are my subordinates. What do you think will happen if I tell them to come pay a courtesy visit to the whole family tomorrow?" Damon shook uncontrollably and collapsed to his knees on the floor. He knew he had messed with the wrong person. The entire family kept absolute silence. No one dared to say a word. The play was over. Gavin hadn't needed a single punch. Just with information and psychological intimidation, he had completely crushed their arrogance. "Delete all those articles immediately," he ordered, "and prepare to go to court. My sister wants to play by the rules, and I'm going to respect that, but don't ever test my patience again." With that, he turned around and, together with Cyrus, walked out as calmly as he had entered, leaving behind a family plunged into absolute fear and despair. I, in the car, had seen everything through the screen, my heart still beating at 1,000 miles an hour. Gavin's show of force had been too effective, too implacable, but it also filled me with immense satisfaction. When Gavin returned to the car, his face had already recovered its usual calm. He started the engine. "It's done. From now on, they won't dare do anything else. The rest is in your hands and the lawyers." On the drive back, silence settled between us. I knew that because of me, Gavin had done things that bordered on the limits of the law. I felt moved and a little worried. "Gavin, No need to say anything," he interrupted. "My job is to protect you. Yours is to be strong and fight for what is yours. Understood?" I nodded, an indescribable emotion filling my chest. The next morning, just as Gavin had said, all the defamatory articles about me on social media disappeared without a trace. Damon's calls also ceased. His family seemed to have evaporated from my life. Calm returned, but it was only the calm before an even greater battle, the legal one. I started working with a lawyer Gavin recommended, a brilliant and sharp woman named Attorney Hart, to prepare the divorce lawsuit and the division of assets. Attorney Hart analyzed all the evidence I had, the medical reports of my injuries, the recordings and messages, and the dossier on the money laundering conspiracy involving Montgomery and Damon. "Ebony," Attorney Hart told me after an exhaustive study, "we have a very solid case. Not only can we get the divorce and the majority of the assets, but we can demand compensation for moral damages. We can even hold Damon criminally liable for assault and complicity in illicit economic activities." But there was one point that made Attorney Hart frown. "In Damon's bank statements, I've noticed several transfers of large amounts to a company called West Horizon LLC. Do you know this company?" I shook my head. The name was completely foreign to me. "I've never heard Damon talk about it." "Strange," murmured Attorney Hart. "These transactions occurred regularly every month for the last 3 years. The total amount comes to almost $200,000. It doesn't look like a normal investment. I need to investigate more about this company." A new secret. A company called West Horizon LLC. What did it have to do with all this? And why would Damon transfer such a large sum there in secret? I felt that my path in search of justice still had many unexpected turns. And who knows? At the end of that road, perhaps not only the truth about Damon awaited me, but also a terrible secret related to the person I trusted most. The name, West Horizon LLC, tormented me day and night. $200,000, a huge sum transferred secretly, month by month for 3 years. It couldn't be a regular expense. If it was an investment, why hadn't Damon said a single word to me? If it was to pay a debt, who did he owe so much money to? And above all, why? A torrent of questions corroded me inside, robbing me of peace. I decided to investigate on my own before talking to Gavin. I didn't want to worry him more, and deep in my heart, a vague feeling of uneasiness prevented me from telling him about the existence of this company, at least not until I had more information. I searched the internet for West Horizon LLC. The results were scarce. It was a small real estate company based in a second-rate office building in another neighborhood. The company website was basic, with generic information about land projects on the outskirts. Nothing stood out. The sole administrator was a completely unknown name, a certain John Pike, with no apparent connection to Damon or the people I knew. It seemed like a dead end. I was about to turn off the computer when I remembered something Gavin had said. I own a security firm and a few other businesses. Would it be possible that... I dismissed the idea immediately. Gavin would never deceive me. He was my only family. At that precise moment, Attorney Hart, my lawyer, called me. Her voice sounded very animated. Ebony, I have excellent news. The court has already sent the summons to Damon and his family. The first settlement hearing will be next week. With the evidence we have, I doubt they'll put up a fight. Thank you, Attorney Hart, I replied, but my heart remained heavy with doubts about West Horizon. Oh, and about that company, continued Attorney Hart, as if reading my thoughts. I asked someone to check it out, and there is a very interesting detail. West Horizon LLC was founded exactly 3 years ago, just after Director Montgomery started his conspiracy. And the registered business address matches the address of one of the old offices of your brother's security firm. My entire body froze. Coincidence? There were no coincidences like that. Gavin's security firm. My heart started beating uncontrollably. A crazy but terrifyingly logical theory began to form in my head. Was it possible that Gavin knew everything for a long time? That he had been pulling the strings behind the scenes, using Damon and me to execute his own plan? The questions I had tried to push away returned stronger than ever. The first anonymous message informing me of the embezzlement. The timely appearance of Director Montgomery's wife. How did she find me and trust me so easily? And Gavin's intimidation tactics. How did he manage to know all the secrets of Damon's family so quickly? Everything seemed too perfect, as if it had been staged. No, I couldn't doubt Gavin. He had saved me. But the evidence in front of me didn't lie. My head was spinning. I didn't know who to believe anymore. I was in the middle of a chess game where everyone seemed to have their own secrets. That night, Gavin returned with a bouquet of white lilies, my favorite flowers. He saw me sitting on the sofa, absorbed in my thoughts, and asked worriedly, "What's wrong? Are you feeling sick?" I lifted my head to look at him, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, just thinking about things." "Don't think too much," he said, placing the flowers in a vase. "It's almost all over. Next week in court, you just have to stay strong." His voice was warm and reliable as always, but for some reason, I felt an invisible distance between us. I looked into his eyes, trying to find an answer, but his deep eyes were like a bottomless well. I couldn't see through him. "Gavin," I blurted out without thinking, "do you know a company called West Horizon LLC?" Gavin paused for a second, his gesture of arranging the flowers halting midair, but he recovered his composure instantly. He turned to me and smiled. "West Horizon? The name sounds familiar. I think it's a small real estate firm. Why do you ask?" He was lying. I knew he was lying. That 1-second hesitation, however brief, did not go unnoticed. Someone like Gavin, with his vast network of information, couldn't just vaguely know of a company linked to his own office. "Oh, it's nothing. I heard someone talking about it. The flowers are beautiful. Thank you." I diverted the topic quickly. The conversation ended there, but inside me, a wall of mistrust had begun to rise. I could no longer trust him fully. I felt pushed into an even more dangerous situation. The enemy in front of me was Damon and his family. But what about the enemy in the shadows? Was it the brother I trusted blindly? That night I couldn't sleep. I decided I had to act. I had to discover the truth about West Horizon and Gavin's true role in all this. Taking advantage of the fact that Gavin was sleeping deeply, I sneaked into his home office. I knew the password to his computer. It was the date of the anniversary of his parents' death. He had accidentally revealed it to me once. My heart pounded against my ribs as I typed each number. The screen lit up. I hurried to search the files. Most were encrypted, but there was an unlocked folder called Project Prometheus. Curious. I opened it. Inside was a plan detailed to a terrifying degree. It wasn't just a plan to help me get divorced. It was a plan for a total hostile takeover. The document described every step, from accidentally leaking information about Damon's gambling addiction to Director Montgomery's wife, to accidentally organizing her meeting with me. It reached the point of using the company West Horizon to siphon money from my account with the dual goal of creating evidence against Damon and simultaneously protecting my assets temporarily. The plan even traced the next step. After Montgomery's company declared bankruptcy, another company would acquire it at a bargain price. And the owner of that company was none other than Gavin. My whole body trembled. So everything was nothing more than a play directed by Gavin himself. He knew everything from the beginning and had even contributed to pushing Damon down the path of crime. He had used me. He had used my pain as a pawn on his board of vengeance and business. I had escaped a golden cage only to fall into an even more sophisticated trap. I was about to close the computer when a final file in the folder caught my attention. It was named The Final Secret. I hesitated. Should I open it? Could I bear another cruel truth? Still, I clicked. The content was a single short video. It was a dash cam recording of an accident on a rainy night. A motorcycle at high speed crashed violently into a truck parked on the shoulder. The driver of the motorcycle was thrown, lying motionless on the asphalt. That accident. I recognized it. It was the accident that took the lives of Gavin's parents more than 20 years ago. But why did he keep this video? And then the camera focused on the truck driver. A man seized by panic got out of the vehicle. Although the image in the rainy night was blurry, I could recognize that face, a face I would never forget. It was Damon's father, Mr. Sterling. My world collapsed in that precise instant. Damon's father, the man who had always seemed so dignified and kind, whom I had respectfully called Dad for 7 years, was responsible for the tragedy that had tormented Gavin his entire life. The video replayed in my mind. I saw the panic on Mr. Sterling's face. He didn't call an ambulance, didn't go to check on the victims. He simply looked around, saw there was no one, and rushed back to the truck to flee, leaving 2 innocent lives behind. Coward, cruel, inhumane. I closed the computer trembling and went back to my room. All the pieces of the puzzle fit together suddenly. Project Prometheus, his revenge. His final goal was the entire Sterling family. I felt compassion for him, rage, and above all, fear. I was trapped in the middle of a war. I couldn't stand by with my arms crossed. I had to discover more about the accident. I remembered that in the video, Mr. Sterling's truck had the logo of a company, Liberty Logistics. I called an old friend in the industry and asked for help. The company had gone bankrupt years ago, but my friend managed to get the number of the old traffic manager, a man named Mr. Bridges. I gathered my courage and called. At first he was reluctant, but when I mentioned the accident, Mr. Sterling's name and Gavin's, his voice changed. "Miss, who are you? How do you know about those things?" "My name is Ebony. I am directly involved. Please tell me the truth." My voice broke. Perhaps my sincerity moved him. He sighed. "All right. If you really want to know, come see me, but don't come alone. Come with young Gavin. There are things I can only tell in the presence of both of you." Mr. Bridges' proposal left my heart in a fist. I had found a crucial witness, but now I had to face Gavin, force him to relive the worst tragedy of his life. I knew that meeting would be a turning point. It could repair our fragile relationship or destroy it forever. That night when Gavin returned, he seemed satisfied. Probably the negotiation with Montgomery had gone well. He saw me waiting for him with a serious expression, and his smile vanished. "What's wrong? Why are you waiting for me like that?" "Gavin, I found a witness to your parents' accident," I said with a trembling voice. "He wants to meet with us. With both of us." Gavin stood motionless. The satisfaction disappeared from his face, replaced by an incredibly complex expression. He looked at me with a deep, unfathomable gaze. I knew he realized I knew much more than he thought. The wall he had strived to build around me was crumbling. "Where is he?" he asked in a hoarse voice. The meeting was in a small neighborhood diner on the outskirts, near where Mr. Bridges lived. The place was old and barely crowded. We sat at a table in the back. The atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. Mr. Bridges, a man over 70, with white hair and a face furrowed by the wrinkles of time, served us tea and with a trembling voice began his story. That year, I was the traffic manager. Sterling, your ex-husband's father, was a rookie driver. He was a good kid, hard-working. Anyway, that night he was assigned an urgent delivery. It was raining cats and dogs. The road was terrible. I told him to be careful. Mr. Bridges paused. He took a sip of tea, his eyes lost in memory. But there is something no one knew. Before the truck left, someone tampered with the brakes. I saw it by chance. A shadow moving stealthily in the garage. It was dark. I only saw a tall, thin figure in a trench coat covering his face. I thought about reporting it, but with the hustle of work, I forgot. The brakes were sabotaged, growled Gavin, fists clenched on the table. So the accident wasn't because Sterling lost control. Not entirely. Mr. Bridges shook his head. Sterling made the mistake of fleeing. That is unforgivable. But the true mastermind was someone else. The one who sabotaged the brakes. The one who caused the accident on purpose. Who was it? Do you know who it was? I asked anxiously. Mr. Bridges looked at both of us. He sighed, a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of 20 years of silence. I only found out later. When everything calmed down, he sought me out, gave me a lot of money, and threatened me to keep quiet. He said if I opened my mouth, my family would never know peace again. Trembling, he took an old yellowed photograph out of his wallet. Here he is. It's him. I've kept this all these years. Gavin took the photo with trembling hands. I leaned in to see. In the image appeared a well-dressed young man standing next to a luxury car. That face looked familiar. Montgomery? Director Montgomery? I whispered, horrified. Exactly. Him, nodded Mr. Bridges. Later, I found out that he and young Gavin's family had some old feud. He set the trap, caused the accident to hurt them, and then pinned all the blame on Sterling. Sterling was nothing more than a pawn, a stupid scapegoat. We were in shock. The truth was even more terrible than we could imagine. Director Montgomery wasn't just the mastermind of a fraud scheme. He was the murderer of Gavin's family, the true demon behind all the tragedies. Gavin's revenge had been aimed at the wrong target. Leaving the diner, both Gavin and I were plunged into overwhelming silence. The truth that had just been revealed was too cruel. It turned everything we thought we knew upside down. Gavin drove aimlessly, his gaze fixed on the road. I was wrong, he finally said, his voice broken. I let hate blind me. I almost destroyed an innocent man, even if he is guilty of running away. He hit the steering wheel hard. Montgomery. I can't believe it was him. He's going to pay. I won't let him live in peace for a single day more. What are you going to do? I asked, worried. Your acquisition plan? That doesn't matter anymore, he interrupted me, his eyes shining with a cutting coldness. Acquiring the company is too soft a punishment for him. A murderer has to pay with his life. I'm going to use my methods to take care of him. I shivered. I knew what his methods meant. The law of the street. Blood for blood. No, Gavin, you can't. I tried to stop him. If you do, you'll become a criminal too. Your parents wouldn't want to see you like that. We have evidence, a witness. Let the law punish him. The law? He laughed, a bitter laugh. Where was the law when my parents died 20 years ago? Where was it when your husband beat you? Ebony, you are too naive. There are people who can only be punished with fists. At that moment, Gavin's phone rang. It was Cyrus. Boss, problems. Montgomery just called. He wants to see you urgently. He sounded very alarmed. I think he suspects something. Gavin frowned. Where? At the Onyx Lounge, in the VIP room on the second floor, at 9. All right. He hung up, thoughtful. That old fox is cunning. Maybe he realized someone is coming for his company. Are you still going? I asked, my heart in a knot. It could be a trap. And if it is? He smiled with disdain. I'm also curious to see what he tries. He looked at me, his gaze a little softer. "Go home and rest. Tonight, I'll handle this." Despite his words, I couldn't stay calm. That night I lied to him. I told him I would go to the apartment, but in reality, I followed him in secret. I took a taxi, keeping a safe distance. I saw his car enter the parking lot of the Onyx Lounge, a well-known and troublesome nightclub. I hid in a dark corner across the street, anxiously watching the window of the VIP room on the second floor. Time passed slowly. Each minute seemed like an eternity. An hour later, I suddenly heard the sound of an argument, the noise of breaking glass, and then a deafening gunshot ripped through the night. I froze, trembling from head to toe. The shot. Gavin. I stopped thinking. I ran across the street toward the bar. People inside were screaming in panic. I shoved my way to the second floor. The hallway was blocked by security guards. I could only see the partially open door of the VIP room from afar. I saw shadows fighting inside, and then I saw Gavin. He was holding his arm. Blood was flowing abundantly. In front of him, Director Montgomery wielded a gun, his face contorted by madness. "Who do you think you are to mess with me?" screamed Montgomery. "You and that bitch Ebony are all going to die." He aimed the weapon at Gavin. I screamed in panic, but it was too late. Another shot was heard, but the one who fell wasn't Gavin. Behind Montgomery, a figure had appeared out of nowhere. It was Cyrus. He had acted in time, using a chair to strike Montgomery hard on the head, who collapsed unconscious on the floor. Immediately, plainclothes police officers surged from everywhere, controlling the situation. Gavin had anticipated everything. He had alerted the police and prepared an ambush. I ran to him. "Gavin, are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's just a scratch," he said, face pale but gaze serene. He looked at Montgomery as they led him away in handcuffs. "I'm sorry to have worried you." The final villain had fallen, but in that moment, I felt a strange emptiness. Montgomery's arrest revealed a heinous crime, but it also meant that Gavin's acquisition plan had failed. And most importantly, it had placed us both in an even more complex situation. We had become crucial witnesses in a homicide case, while simultaneously being the guardians of the secret of another murder from 20 years ago. The next day, at the hospital, the police questioned us. Montgomery, cornered, confessed everything. The accident, the money laundering, the attempted murder. But when they asked him for the motive for the feud with Gavin's family, he just smiled enigmatically. "Feud? You would never understand. Go ask my good brother. He will give you the answer." That cryptic phrase left us frozen. Good brother? Who was he talking about? And what was, after all, that feud? Was there another secret? Another person hidden in the shadows? Montgomery's enigmatic phrase, "Go ask my good brother," echoed in my mind, and Gavin's like an infernal echo. Who was he referring to, and what was the true, deep feud that had rotted their families for decades? While the official investigation took its course, life, or what was left of it, continued. The settlement hearing for my divorce from Damon was held as scheduled, but the atmosphere was radically different. The Sterling family, upon learning of the arrest of Montgomery, their protector, and the exposure of the entire conspiracy, no longer dared to even breathe. They entered the courtroom with the air of the defeated, heads down. Mr. Sterling seemed to have aged 10 years in a week. Mrs. Sterling no longer shouted or caused scenes. They knew their fate was now entirely in my hands. Damon stood in front of me without the courage to look me in the eye. "Ebony," he said in a hoarse voice, "I agree to the divorce. I accept all your conditions. I just ask you to forgive my father. He is not a bad person. He is also a victim." "Victim?" I laughed with disdain. "A man who flees after causing a fatal accident. A husband who allows his family to defame his wife. That is a victim?" "It's not what you think," Damon rushed to say, his face contracted with anguish. "There are things you don't know. The fault lies with my father, yes, but it is also a matter of destiny." His words planted a new doubt in me. Destiny. What the hell was he talking about? But I didn't want to ask more. I was too tired of that family's secrets. I just wanted to put a period at the end of the sentence. The process was fast. I got custody of our son, who we barely spoke of, but was my priority, the majority of the assets, and fair compensation for moral damages. My 7-year marriage officially came to its bitter end. After court, I decided I couldn't live in that uncertainty. We had to find the answer to Montgomery's words. Gavin and I started with the only clue we had, the good brother. Using his network of contacts, it didn't take Gavin long to find a name, a man named Felix, owner of a major restaurant chain and business partner of Montgomery for years. But what surprised us most was that this Mr. Felix had a special relationship with another person, someone I would have never imagined. Attorney Graves, my lawyer. I was stunned when Gavin told me. Impossible. She helped me. She is a good person. Good or not, we have to check, Gavin said, his gaze hardening. Her appearance was too timely, her enthusiasm a little excessive. I had her followed. She has met with this Felix guy several times. In secret. A shiver ran down my spine. Another betrayal. The person I had trusted, with whom I had shared all my secrets, could be hiding her own conspiracy. I refused to believe it. I had to see her. I had to demand explanations. I showed up at Attorney Graves's office without prior notice. When I appeared, she was disconcerted, but quickly recovered her professional composure. "Ebony, what are you doing here? Has something happened?" "Yes, something very urgent." I went straight to the point, placing the photo of her and Mr. Felix sitting together in a cafe on her desk. "Can you explain this relationship to me?" Attorney Graves' face changed completely. She kept silent for a long moment and then sighed. "I knew sooner or later you would find out. Sit down, Ebony. There are things that, at this point, you need to know." And then she began to tell a story that opened a page of the past even more terrifying than everything I already knew. Attorney Graves and Montgomery weren't strangers, they were cousins. Montgomery's father and the lawyer's mother were siblings. But in the past, due to a dispute over the grandparents' inheritance, Montgomery's father had cruelly conspired against his own sister, driving her to ruin and death from sorrow. "Since I was little, I have lived with this hatred," said Attorney Graves, her voice loaded with bitterness. "My only goal was to make the Montgomery family, and especially him, pay for everything. I became a lawyer. I gathered evidence of their crimes, but he was too cunning. He always found a way to escape. So why did you help me?" "Because you were the key." She looked at me, her gaze complex. "When I learned of your story, of your connection to Damon's family and Montgomery's, I knew it was my opportunity. I approached you on purpose. I helped you, yes, but in reality, I was using you. I turned you into a pawn in my own revenge plan to take down Montgomery using your hand and your brother's." I sat paralyzed. All her dedication, her advice, it was all false. "I'm sorry, Ebony," she said with a hint of remorse. "But I had no other choice, and now I will tell you the final secret, the true reason for the feud between Montgomery and Gavin's family." She opened a drawer and took out an old yellowed dossier. "This is what my mother left me. She investigated and discovered that the accident involving Gavin's parents wasn't caused directly by Montgomery. He only sabotaged the brakes. The true mastermind, the one who gave the order to Montgomery, that is the authentic demon." She opened the dossier. Inside was a black and white portrait of a man. I had seen that face in the old photo album of Gavin's family. "Who is he?" I asked, trembling. "He is Montgomery's father," said the lawyer, "and he was also the sworn brother whom Gavin's father trusted blindly. But the most terrible thing isn't that betrayal." She turned to another page, an old birth certificate. Montgomery's mother and Gavin's mother were sisters. I felt like I was running out of air. Sisters. So Gavin and Montgomery were cousins. "Exactly," nodded Attorney Graves. "The feud began in the previous generation. Montgomery's father, out of envy for the success of Gavin's father and desiring the woman they both loved, who was Gavin's mother, planned the murder of his own brother-in-law. He used his son, Montgomery, turning him into his tool to kill. A family tragedy, a vicious cycle of hate and deceit extending through generations." Just at that moment, as if destiny wanted to add a final and cruel irony, my cousin Mateo, who lived abroad, returned unexpectedly to the States. He brought with him an old family diary that his mother had left him. The diary revealed a third generation of tragedy. Our grandmothers, mine and Gavin's, had been rivals for the love of the same man, a story of betrayal that ended in suicide. Our families were enemies long before we were born. And in the diary was the last and most shocking secret. A birthmark, a small spot in the shape of a crescent moon behind the right ear, which was a distinctive trait of our lineage. A mark my adoptive mother didn't have, but I did. I was the true biological granddaughter. My mother, the woman I thought had adopted me, had been switched at birth. My true mother, the legitimate heiress, had been hidden somewhere. And the mastermind behind everything, behind the kidnapping of my mother, was none other than Montgomery's father. He did it so he could control the immense fortune of our family. Everything clicked in an instant of blinding clarity. I wasn't just another piece on the board. I wasn't a pawn in anyone's game. I was the origin of everything, the prize, the reason why the hate had begun. The stolen child, whose inheritance had unleashed a blood war that had lasted almost a century. My entire life had been a lie built on the foundations of someone else's greed. If you liked my story and want to hear more, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support me, you can do it through Super Thanks. It would mean a lot. In the comments, tell me which city you're watching from and what time it is, so I can see how far my story reaches. I've added 2 more life stories on the screen just for you. Click one now, and let's keep spending time together. Much love. See you soon.
I'd really appreciate your support. Please subscribe and leave a comment. May God bless you.